So I'm sure we've all seen some headline similar to this one here about there being a second Sphinx under the plateau at Giza. And this came out by Filippo Bondi on the Matt Beal Lifestyles podcast and was also originally picked up by the Daily Mail. And so what's really being challenged is Bondi's claiming that there is a potential 108-foot structure under the sands at Giza that was picked up with the S.A.R. technology that they used to scan the pyramids. He's really kind of using the supporting evidence of the dream stele having two, here, check it out right here. You see the two lions on there, the two sphinxes. So that, and there's also been some backup claims by an Egyptologist, Bassam el-Shamma, and this was over a decade ago, and he's really kind of citing ancient records and mythology that talk about there being a second Sphinx that was potentially destroyed and hit by lightning or dismantled and reused for parts, spare materials. Tourism official Rida Abdel Haliam also in 2021 said that a Sphinx had been possibly found underground, but the size that he mentioned was around 246 feet. This is on the tails of the claim that Filippo Bondi also came out with earlier this year about possibly there being a mega structure under the pyramid. Originally, these were the scans that were first done, and everything else right now is kind of just a byproduct of all that. And so what is synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography? So here we have the research paper by Filippo Bondi and Corrado Malenga, right? And this is synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography reveals details of undiscovered high-resolution internal structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Cool. What does that mean? So what is this research paper? Well, the PDF is about 44 pages long, and it's really kind of an interesting concept. All right, so I think what we kind of need to do is just understand a little bit of what S.A.R. Or synthetic aperture radar is. And basically it is satellite-based radar imaging that sends microwave pulses down to Earth, and that measures a reflected signal phasing and timing. And it's really good for seeing surfaces versus the interiors. Unlike ground-penetrating radar, actually can penetrate through materials and map out what's below. This really just takes an image and it bounces off of the object, and then it is a category of those images. But it's also a little bit more than that, and we're going to get into it in a minute about the vibrations and everything. The research is proposing is really less about using a radar to see inside the pyramids, and it was originally about using a satellite radar to detect tiny movements and then trying to reconstruct the interior from those signals. So there is one thing to note before we kind of get into this, and we're going to go over this later in the rebuttal video, but S.A.R. does have poor penetration into solid materials, right? It's not used to see through solid mass. And again, it's kind of important to make that stress because a lot of people are thinking that the S.A.R. is like 3D imaging. It itself is not, but what they coupled it with, the Doppler tomography, is kind of where this 3D imaging idea comes in. According to the paper, the primary goal is to test and demonstrate a new S.A.R. Doppler tomography method using a known structure as the target, right? When you think of it logically, it comes down to what is the largest structure that we have already mapped that can be seen from satellite. It's the Great Pyramid, all right? So that's why the Great Pyramid is chosen. We've already been able to map the inside of it, and it can be seen from a satellite, the outside of it. Now, the interesting part is the pyramid does resonate, right? Piezoelectricity is a real thing in the granite, and it causes the pyramid to vibrate. So what the Doppler tomography addition is it is basically catching images of the pyramid in between the vibrations, and then it is using the images in between the vibrations because essentially in between the vibrations, the outside is transparent and everything inside can be revealed. Now, again, I am no scientist. This is a very, very layman's breaking it down for a dummy like myself terms, and I could be completely wrong. I'm sure the comments are going to go off on this, but this is how I understand it. And so in between those vibrations, they can put together the pictures and map out what's inside. So basically, the idea of the research was to see if this technology can potentially be a reliable source to map something out. Because again, we already know that the pyramids, we already know the layout of the pyramids, and basically we can take the results of the S.A.R Doppler tomography and put that on top of what we already know. And if it reveals the same thing, then they can say, hey, this does work because the results are showing things that we already know, right? So that's how I understand it to be. Interesting part happened is the test results have not been peer reviewed, right? They are, this right here is peer review. So this stuff, go check this out, review it. But obviously, I personally think at the end of the day, that is what Filippo Biondi wants, is he wants people to look at his work and say yes or no, here's why it does, here's why it doesn't work. But let's be nice about it, right? That's also how things are going to get ahead in the world, is to be nice about it and to present it. And the only reason I'm talking about it, I'm a dummy, but I do understand things. So I feel like if I can understand it, I can try to relay it so everybody else can understand it and then form their own opinion instead of just going off the headlines, which is obvious. Everybody just stop going off the headlines, all right? Read 3 sources. Read from your side, read from the other side, and read from an outside source. Boil down the bullshit, and wherever all 3 of them match up, that's the kernel of truth. Follow that trail from there. Don't read the headlines. It's all bullshit. It's clickbait. And the headlines are really where this is all starting from, right? Because now it's really just spiraling kind of out of control. And all right, so here we are, the mainstream rejection and why there's no love for this theory that there's a second Sphinx under the Giza Plateau. So we're going to start off with, what's the mainstream saying? Well, they're saying that there's no archaeological evidence, the technology is not tested or proven, that it can't see inside the structures, and the discovery is outside the entire official system. The Archaeology, Zaki Hawass, they are all saying that that's not true. And actually here is a response a while back from Zahi himself on Facebook, and this was to the original claims of there being a mega structure underneath the pyramids. Question to this is Biondi in his lane, right? Where is he at? What's he doing? How's he going about this? He is the radar guy, right? That's what he's known for, that's what he does, and what he was doing is building a new radar-based method. And look at the actual paper, it is the explanation of a new system, not the convinced discovery of new structures. The claims of new structures is really just a byproduct of everything else, right? And I do want to say that right here in his research paper, Biondi even mentions that S.A.R technology is not good at revealing what is inside the structures. And again, as we kind of went over, it's not, right? It's good for mapping things out, but where they were being able to see inside was that addition of the Doppler tomography, right? That really was what was taking the images in between the vibrations and using that to map out what was going on inside. So again, the claim and the blow up on this is really kind of coming out on the podcast and really getting fed leading questions talking about this, or maybe answering it without having the proof or anything yet. But I will say, from what I've heard and how I interpret it, it is a very speculative just thought, and I think it is being used to push forward just to get some more research done on what could potentially be under the Giza Plateau, if anything. There were some next steps. What could we really do? I mean, obviously everybody's going to go, well, ground penetrating radar, and that has been done multiple times on the plateau. The biggest problem with the GPR is limestone is dense and it blocks the radar. So you can't really get, I mean, you're 20 feet of limestone and bedrock. So it's hard to really get an accurate reading of what is below in a mapping with the GPR. It's just not great. Now, there's also a lot of talk about LiDAR, and use LiDAR, it's working in the Amazon. Okay, LiDAR works great in the Amazon because what LiDAR does is it's able to remove the heavy vegetation and lay down the topography of what's below. LiDAR does not penetrate the ground either. It again, it's removes the vegetation. The vegetation in the Amazon is so thick, the canopy is so interlaced that you can't see through it. Only something like 8, 10, 3%, some crazy low percentage of sunlight actually gets through the canopy in the Amazon forest. And so LiDAR is just removing that canopy. There's no canopy. See, there's no canopy above the Sphinx, so LiDAR is just going to enhance the ground. You know, it's going to sharpen the imagery of the ground, but it's not really going to get under and show what's underneath. Kind of besides drilling, right? And that's, you know, the permits, and we're going to get into that in a second, but drilling's really out of the question too. You're not just going to be excavating the Giza Plateau. I mean, even if you're 150% sure something's under there, getting a permit to excavate the plateau, I just don't think that that's in the cards anytime soon. So muon tomography is probably the best idea or the best next step. It's kind of the gold standard for non-invasive deep scanning. Seismic surveys are a little bit better than GPR for deep surface readings, but again, even with the limestone, the seismic surveys could have some issues mapping what's underneath. The muon topography, it's a density map, not a blueprint, right? So it passes the radar down through the stone, and what you get is a image of particle density. So the more stone, so the thicker the stone, the more stone that's back there, the fewer particles you're going to see. The less stone, or the bigger, you know, if there's a void back there, you're going to see more particles. And this is the technology that they use to locate the hidden chamber above the Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid. But again, there are problems with all of this, and the problem that you face with the muon is getting the detectors deep enough, because you would still have to drill holes down into the plateau to drop the detectors, so the radar can hit the detectors, bounce off, do its thing, map out as it's coming back up. So, you know, you can't really put the detectors on the surface and expect to get an accurate picture of what's below. But you know, may be able to get that permit easier than a permit to fully excavate the pyramids, or to fully excavate the Giza Plateau. Because again, that's really the main issue here is there's heavy restrictions, the permits are tightly controlled, and just being able to excavate the site is crazy. So hopefully this kind of gives some information a little bit deeper onto what's really going on with the scanning. And like I said, don't even take my word for it, but also don't just take the headline words for it. So go out, do the research yourself, check out Filippo Bondi's paper. I appreciate you. See you on the next one. Stay curious.